All right, hello. Welcome to this episode of Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. I'm Paul Worthell, and I'm joined by Jen, Ian, Dan, and Ken. And today we're talking to Lane from Signal Genesys about using content to build SEO signals. So, a lot to cover. So let's get started. Lane, Signal Genesys. That's an interesting name. Where did that come from? What's the story behind it?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. So, I guess to give you the quick backstory, I started my own generalist agency back in 2010, and quickly wanted to build recurring revenue into the game or in the mix. Besides just doing websites month over month over month, and just kind of being like a hamster on the wheel. So, SEO was really the best place to start for me in terms of recurring revenue. And so over the course of about 6-7 years, we developed our own SEO strategy, and signal generation and content syndication were kind of the two heads of our SEO strategy. So when we got to building our own software platform to help create efficiencies, economies of scale, allow us as an agency to really scale more with SEO being such a normally or typically a heavy lift. Signal generation was really one of that core pieces of our strategy. And so when we first launched, we actually launched only with press releases, kind of as our main method of developing or generating signals in our platform. And so we came out with version 1.0 called it Quantum Newswire. But we had a much bigger vision than just press releases in the overall scope of what we were going to be building as a platform. But didn't really want to reveal everything that we were going to do from the word go, because we knew we would have competitors who would be looking at some of the things we would do. So until we were ready to really launch our final brand, which today is Signal Genesys, we operated as Quantum Newswire for about the first 2.5 years. But the overall name comes from the process of generating ranking signals or ranking factors in the process of doing SEO or holistic web presence for a company.
Yeah, Lane, as you know, we've been we started out using Quantum Newswire probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And, it's a fantastic solution. And I think it's a really interesting take, on what most people would think of as, initially it kind of started out, like you said, with press releases.
Right.
But it's a completely different take on it. And press releases obviously were super hot, 5 years ago. That was a great SEO strategy. Now it's not, because typically the SEO goes to the distribution system that you're using and not to the client's content or to your content that you're posting. So talk about some of the unique features you have on the platform and why really pretty much any business should be using it.
That's a great point, or great question, Ken. What goes really to kind of one of the foundational or core strategies that we built into Quantum and now Signal Genesys, and that is our sourcing feature. And to your point, we used like I said just a few minutes ago, content syndication and signal generation were the two components of our overall, at the high level, our SEO strategy. And so from the content syndication part of it, going back to 2013, 2014, we started using press releases as a part of our content syndication strategy. So we would write or author good quality content for our client, and then we would look to syndicate that content out to blogs and obviously press releases, news sites, wherever we could get that content to just get more signals and or just more traffic from that one piece of content. So as we began to use the press release platforms, I used several. I used Press Cable, probably the most, because they seem to be at that time the cheapest. But I used EIN Presswire, I tried Access Wire, I tried Newswire, I tried PR Newswire. I think there's a few others I'm missing there, but
Press Advantage, maybe.
Press Advantage, yeah, there's one. So I tried, most of those in the process of trying to see which one was, would have the best, results, which one was the most friendly as an agency, and that was really one kind of key component, was that none of them were built for an agency. they were all built for kind of any user, and the majority, in fact, all of those I think that I just mentioned, all serve both businesses or agencies, and they really kind of have maybe a quasi agency model for an agency, but they're really more built for the end user business for the most part. So, I never really found a press release platform that was really built for agencies that would really solve our needs, number one. And number two, we did see good efficacy, like you were mentioning, Ken, especially back in like 2013 to 2016, those 3 or 4 years there, we saw really good efficacy with press releases, no matter really who we used. Because I think at that point, the algorithm was still not as sophisticated as it is today. But as we use those, like you said, what I saw happening was as an agency, we were writing a press release for a client. We were trying to do SEO for a client. So content syndication was a part of that process. We would write the press release, put it into the platform for, let's say, PR Newswire or Press Advantage or Press Cable, and then publish it out. And the first thing they would do was it would be published to the press releases website.
Right.
And what really caught my eye on this, what really kind of caught my attention to this was I submitted. Well, first of all, I recognize that this is not the right process for SEO, because Google looks at authorship, right? And Google wants to know where is the first place a piece of content or article is ever published. And once it's published on a site first, it's assigned the canonical. And we have a term in the industry for it. It's assigned the canonical. And therefore, any other times that content appears online, it's duplicate content. Another term we have in the industry. And so if there's duplicate content, the only entity that truly gets the majority or potentially all of the benefit is the original source of that content. That has its roots in authorship. Well, authorship goes back in Google's algorithm to its very beginnings. I mean, Google is looking for the original content, the original author who wrote that or produced that content. And so when I would take a piece of content for a client and then publish it through a press release platform, and they would publish it to their site first, I was like, well, damn, they're stealing the authorship of this, What really caught my eye to it was one day I said, I'm going to try and do this a little bit backwards and not necessarily follow what they say I have to do on Press Cable. And so I would publish the press release on my client site first. And then I would actually go and publish it in Press Cable, and I got it rejected. And they said, this content already appears somewhere else. This is not original content. You can't publish it on our platform. You need to change it or revise the article so that it's original content. Something to that effect. This is maybe back in 2016 or 17 when that happened. And I was like, well, all right, there's my point, right? Like they recognize that this is an issue. They recognize original versus duplicate content. They're forcing me to put the original content into their platform first so that they can publish it to their website first. They're stealing the authorship of all of this, and therefore they're going to get the majority of the benefit.
Yeah.
So that's the backstory to this. So when we engineered Signal Genesys, we engineered a site sourcing feature which allows the agency or the SEO professional or expert to decide where they're going to publish the content or press release first. And then they can then put that source URL in our platform, and then on all the media sites, we assign the canonical to the original source of the press release, which is decided by the agency. We then went to a second step and automated the publication of the content from our platform to the website, so that it would publish to the website, the target site first. We then ping Google Search Console to come and make sure it crawls it so it does get assigned the canonical. And then we begin publication out to the media sites with the explicit URL of the source, which the agency determines on their own before they actually hit the publish button.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but I felt it was probably appropriate to give the backstory on that as to why we don't do it. And it's really has its roots in authorship. And today, a lot of people thought authorship kind of disappeared when they took those. Remember when, years ago when you had an authorship snippet, you would get your picture next to the search result, and it was a really cool enhanced search result. It was kind of one of those first enhanced snippets. Well, then they took the authorship snippet away after like 2 or 3 years of that. And then I think a lot of the SEO community thought, well, I guess authorship doesn't mean anything as much anymore. And to the contrary, Google doubled down and now has a whole portion of their algorithm called the EAT section. EAT standing for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And the entire EAT component of the algorithm has its roots in authorship. They're looking at the creator of the content.
Yep, absolutely.
Goodness. Wow. Lane, I've heard you mention agency, but not small business. Is this offering, is it appropriate for a small business to use?
We don't offer it to small businesses. A great question, Jen. We offer it to agencies who then can offer it to their small business clients.
Okay. So
we do have this as a specific solution for the digital agency world. And then they in turn leverage the platform for, 1, 5, 10, or 100 or more of their clients, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And Lane, is this type of tool, is it something that can be used for prospecting and gaining and closing new clients or customers?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good one. So yes. So I'll tell you the two-part answer to that question is yes and yes. But here's the version 1 of that answer was we have one of our active agencies. He does high-level SEO. So he does kind of like celebrity SEO, athlete SEO, right? Real high-level stuff. He charges $5K a month for his package. That's it. $5K, you're either in or you're out. If it doesn't work, you can't afford me, too bad. Move on to the next person. Last year, before our Media Room software and Media Room app channel launched, he used our software. He won't let us tell us. I can't use his name because he's, he just like doesn't want it. But he used our software to close over 100 new clients at $5K a month. At $5K a month, that's $500,000 in recurring revenue. He used our platform to close with. Now he also used it for the SEO. But to your question, Paul, he used it basically by. He'd do his opening presentation, talk about what makes him different, what's special, whatever. And then at the close, when he would go to, he'd give him the proposal, when he would go to the close session, he would present them with a press release, or he had written a press release about their company and got them published on NBC, CBS, Fox, whatever. And then when he was at the close session, he would just show them a few of those URLs where he got them published. And so, yeah, he was an investment of, maybe $50 or so, not a lot, but that was dramatically different. No one else had done anything of really doing anything of value before they asked for, the prospect to pay the first invoice. Here he's coming in loaded in with value, showing, hey, I just got you published on NBC. This is what makes us different. This is part of what makes us different. Whatever. I don't know his whole sales pitch, but he would publish a PR in advance of them being a client, show that to them on the close session, give that to them kind of as a parting gift if they didn't do business together. But you know how that is. Most people were like, hey, when do we start? So fast forward now with our Media Room software, our agencies can now go into the platform, add a prospect as an entity into their account at no cost, and then launch a Media Room for that prospect at no cost, and then do a press release for that company if they want, for whatever the distribution cost is that they have. It varies depending on their level, but from $10 to $30 is the cost to send out one article out to the news sites. So super low cost. The margins on that are hundreds of percents. I mean, Newswire charges typically $400 to $500 for a distribution of a 400-word release. So if your cost basis is $10 to $30 as an agency, number one, it allows you, Paul, to use it for prospecting because you're not paying $300-400 just to do it for a prospect, right? You're paying $10 to $30, number one. Number two, all he has to do is kind of copy and paste from their about page, their blog, a blog article. So it's not a lot of work. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes, $10 to $30 of expense. And now you can show up at that close meeting. You've got a hosted Media Room already hosted in the cloud, already with its first press release published. And then you can scroll down and show them in the news section and show them, hey, you got published on NBC, CBS, Fox, a sports site, a lifestyle site, whatever, all these different news sites. And then you can tie that back into your first presentation where you say, this is what makes us different about, providing SEO. I don't really refer to it as SEO. I refer to it as web presence or managed web presence. I don't sell SEO. I haven't sold SEO really for 6-7 years. I refer to it once or twice so that the client or prospect can kind of associate, what we're talking about.
Right.
But then I differentiate and say, everyone else who's selling SEO is really thinking about it from the old perspective of put up a website, put up some content, build some links. Google's algorithm is way more sophisticated after 12, 20 years of doing this. Today in 2021, they have hundreds of data points. They look at you. These are signals, and digital PR and digital PR brand strategy and web presence is a much more holistic approach to doing SEO. Ultimately, we're going to position your client, or you as the client, as an expert and an authority in your space. And by using a digital PR brand strategy as part of the overall web presence and SEO strategy, we're going to build your authority and get you ranking, or build, give you lift in the rankings. So, to put the point on that question, you can have that whole media room, press release, publication on multiple news sites, all for the cost of about $10 to $30 and a few minutes of your time, and show up to that close session. And no one has done that for them. You're 100% different than every other agency that's ever touched them before. And you're not even talking about SEO the way every other agency who's pitched them before has talked about it or demonstrated. And I always like to say, when you add value before you ever ask for a penny in compensation, the whole presentation comes off different, right? You're there selling, you're adding value.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think there's a deeper meaning of behind the kind of press release that you're talking about here, Lane, where it's not your typical, like you mentioned, a few of those that have always been around, where it's like, okay, well, you can throw them $300, $400, and you can say, hey, you're picked up by all these whatevers, all over the universe. It looks good, but it doesn't have the kinds of things that you're talking about going for them. I mean, you can't really have an SEO discussion. Like, you can't have a deeper discussion about it. It is what it is on those kinds of services. And that's been a bit of a frustration of mine for quite some time. It's kind of, well, you can get what you pay for with these things. They'll get you out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a vanity play. Really, it's more of a
vanity play. It's a total vanity play. It's like, hey, I can get you on this first page for a long time, but is this even where you want to be? Like, do you want to be picked up in New Mexico by some obscure media publication, like website? What does that even mean for you?
Right. Whereas
what I think you're doing here is so much more closely tied to some of their real goals and where they want to really be as a business. It just sounds so much smarter in that way.
I think that's it's because we were anchored to serving those businesses and knowing that the number one priority for them was ranking their own assets in search. I mean, vanity is fine, but it doesn't make the phone ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a great bragging thing, right? Over cocktails at a happy hour with your friends. But if it doesn't make the phone ring and actually drive in more business, then it kind of leaves you with like the cotton candy experience.
And that's kind of what leads me to my question is, we're talking about the real evolution of the press release, and I wonder, even as we speak now, you're probably thinking about the next evolution of Signal Genesys. What does that kind of look like for you as far as what's on the development roadmap? Can you give us a little sneak peek of what that might be?
Really exciting stuff. So actually, as of July 1st, we launched that Media Room app channel. And that was the first of what is many app channels to come. Now, we also have Twitter and Reddit app channels now live as well. Everything that we're doing has its foundation in holistic brand signal generation. Okay, so we're thinking that way with everything that we're going to do with these app channels is all about managing the presence, the web presence of a brand, and increasing the web presence or improving the web presence of that brand. So with these app channels, for instance, Twitter and Reddit, both have great benefit when used in conjunction with your SEO strategy. Those platforms have a lot of authority. They can push a lot of authority. They're great connections. They rank well. As Google sees them as great authority. So with the Twitter and Reddit app channels, what can happen now is just more signal generation. our agencies can go into the platform, go into one of their client, we call them entities in our system because that's the way Google looks at them, as an entity. So you go to the entity, for which is a client account, you activate an app channel. So I'm going to connect the Twitter account for client X. I'm going to connect the Reddit account for client X. And then once those accounts are connected, like you've probably done in other, Hootsuite or other social platforms, you just connect once. And then once that connection's made, it's there. And then you can then use the Twitter and Reddit accounts as syndication endpoints. So we can distribute the content now, not just to the media networks, we can also syndicate them to the Twitter, the Reddit account. And then also we have our new social wall. So you can take the same type of 2 lines of HTML code that we give you to deploy the media room on your client's website. A similar 2 lines of code for the social wall you put on your client's website, and now you can aggregate all of their social posts onto the actual client's website. So we're publishing press releases or articles to those social accounts automatically if those apps are connected on the platform for that entity. And then we can also deploy the social wall for that entity, which is going to generate very powerful social signals off of the client's direct website. We can now direct social traffic to the client's website instead of directly to the social platform. So think of this. Right now, we generate for a client, let's say, a post, and that post goes to Twitter, Reddit, and Facebook. And then if the client wants to send somebody to that post, they typically say, well, here's the Facebook post, or here's the tweet on Twitter. And their prospects or customers or stakeholders go to Twitter to see the post, or to Facebook to see the post. Mm-hmm. With our social wall, you can drive that traffic now to your social feed on your website. And now your customers are going to your website as to see that feed or that post, that social post. They don't have to be logged into that platform anymore like they do to see most of the content on any of those platforms. They have to be logged in and have an account with them. So what are we doing now? Instead of driving the traffic to Facebook and Facebook getting the credit, and now our prospect or our user is hit with other ads of competitors on Facebook's system, now we can show them our Facebook posts on our social feed on our website. We now have more signals. We have a traffic signal. We have a dwell time signal. We have a bounce rate signal. And we have the actual ability just to keep them on our website now instead of bouncing them off to a social platform with a social icon in our header or our footer or both, right? So that's to your point there, or question, what's the future look like? These app channels are all about signal generation and generating more authority and more of a presence for the target site. And then secondly, it's just going to keep expanding. We have GMB. The GMB app is really getting close to being done. We have GMB reviews, GMB insights, and GMB basic posting already done. Advanced posting and the geogrids are being worked on actively right now. And we expect the final approval from Google on our app. It's already been given kind of final approval, except for a couple of features that they need to go in and check on. But next week, maybe the week after, that entire GMB app will become available for all of our agencies. What that'll be is basically a local Viking type of replacement, or a Bright Local type of replacement, or DBA platform, Local Falcon. All of that will be inside Signal Genesys, but you'll also have press releases. You'll have Twitter. You'll have Reddit. Facebook and Instagram are already done. We're just waiting on final approval from Facebook on that app. So you'll be able to connect Facebook and Instagram accounts to reach client. You'll be able to post to those social platforms, syndicate press releases to those platforms, and then aggregate all of that on a social wall and generate just a bunch of all cool, great signals on the client's website.
Yeah, the GMB thing is awesome.
We're really excited about that. We took our developers off of a bunch of other things. I have more I can talk to you about of what's coming, but when Local Viking had that happen to them, it obviously left thousands of agencies hanging with really nothing, no alternative solution other than a really expensive alternative with DBA platform. So we took all of our developers basically and put them all on the GMB here in the last 3 to 4 weeks. which is why we've already got a lot of this stuff done and pretty much ready to go.
Cool. So you've definitely established yourself as an authority in this space, and there's this concept out there about link stacks, using link stacks to build SEO signals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple different terms in that. In the industry, we have Google stacks, which refers to a stack or a set of properties, Google properties built around, a single entity or brand. Google Docs, Google Sheet, a Google Calendar, obviously a Gmail account, a YouTube account, a Google site, a Google business site. All of those are Google properties, and so those are oftentimes referred to as a Google stack, which is a set of those properties all revolving around a brand or an entity. And then we have another term called a press release stack, or stacking press releases. That's kind of referring to doing press releases on our platform, or articles. Press releases, yes, but they're really quasi press releases, quasi blog articles, but content that is syndicated in succession over time. So one after another after another. And the way that the reason why we refer to them as a stack is I'll do press release number one, and I'll link press release number one to a key page or post that I want to rank. And then when I do press release number one, that's where I'll link. But then when I do press release number two, the first link in press release number two will link to press release number one. And then when I do press release number three, the first link in press release number three will link to press release number two. And so there's a succession and a stack of them. And the way Google sees that, and then when it crawls each successive press release, it's going to then recrawl that previous press release in the stack, and then when it crawls that, it'll see the link to press release number one, and then go recrawl press release number one in the stack. And so you're driving authority kind of up the stack when you refer to it as a press release stack. It's really just a form of doing articles or press releases and syndicating them in succession over time. And I have that kind of in a blueprint document that I put together for all of our users of how to do a press release stack or article stacking on our platform. And then link stacking is really kind of just a variation of that. It's just kind of really just linking, link one, link two, link three, and then you're just linking to the previous links, so to speak. But that's, where the term stacking comes from. But it has different meanings depending on whether they're talking about a Google stack or a press release or article stack or a link stack.
So, Lane, I know we've already talked about this a little bit. I just want to reiterate, because I think this is one of the really powerful things about Signal Genesys, is that it gives you the ability as the agency on behalf of yourself or your client to get the domain credit or the URL, the canonical URL established for your website or wherever you decide to publish it. But one of the things I wanted to talk about and go back to is this idea of the social wall. Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating to me, because as an agency owner, and all of us work with a variety of different clients and in different capacities, but sometimes it's really hard to get anything back from the client. Whether it's even for us to have the raw material to go write a press release or a blog post or whatever. But, generally, most of the time they're pretty comfortable posting content, on Facebook or Instagram. They usually have one channel that they really like to
right.
use.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like this is a great way to get your client to actually give you something that's highly usable, that really helps you help them, with this social wall. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's a couple of different strategies I'll kind of put into one with these app channels, and the way that we now can, I would say embed, because it's HTML code that you just, drop into a page and publish, as long as it's in an HTML code or code widget or section or HTML page. You can just drop the code in, hit publish, and you're done. Now, our software deploys that page, hosts and manages it all from the cloud. But what's going into that is number one, signal generation, right? So we're able to take social signals that are normally pretty weak. If you look at the the pie chart and the local ranking factor study that Moz puts out every year, social signals has always been dead last in terms of influence and efficacy in driving, map pack rankings and organic rankings. But with the way that we're integrating it now, we're going to generate very powerful social signals off of the target website with that 2 lines of code that you just drop into your client's website. So that's number one, is just, raw signal generation that isn't happening, but once you drop that code in, will happen automatically. To your point, Ken, if they're already posting on Facebook or Twitter, or that's because that's their preferred method, every time they post there from their phone, it's going to drop into their social wall like instantaneously. We've tested it's like within like 2 or 3 seconds of them hitting publish and it going to that platform, it's going to appear in the social wall as well.
Wow.
The other thing that's happening there is that we have achieved Google crawling and indexing behind our code. I want to let you pause and think about that. We're dropping 2 lines of code into the website and the media room is deployed or the social wall is deployed. The human eye can only see those 2 lines of code. Googlebot is getting into the code, excuse me, behind the code and crawling the individual posts, the individual press releases, and all the links and everything else on those pages. We've tested that and affirmed that. So that's pretty amazing.
That's definitely powerful.
Yeah. And then thirdly, you've got a direct deliverable now to the client, right? Now as an agency, you're delivering a media room to them, you're delivering a social wall to them. They can see this for their own eyes. This is a deliverable. They can see, and you can tie it in with what you're doing for them. The last piece of this is that with these 2 lines of code, we really put the agencies in the driver's seat. And here's what the story I give you. We know as an agency how hard you work to go get a client. You spend time, money. It's hard to acquire one client. It's expensive. Once you acquire a client, you want to keep that client. But we know how business owners are. Once they see success, they tend to think that it was all attributed to them, or they got their cousin now who runs a marketing agency and can do it just as good as you have. Or all of a sudden they get cheap and they're ranking now and they figure I don't need to do this anymore for a while. There's all sorts of different reasons why clients think they should cancel with you, even when you've delivered results to them. And when you get that phone call and they say, hey, we're bailing, we're giving you notice that we're canceling, you want to know, and you want them to know that it was your agency that got them the results. And when your agency is disengaged, they're not going to see the same results that they had when you were engaged. They were engaged with you. You can go into your Signal Genesys account and hit the delete button, and the social wall goes dark, the media room goes dark, everything goes dark. Or they can decide they want to pay you to keep that alive for them, because those are hosted. You're paying for that, and if they're not going to pay you, everything that you're providing them no longer goes with it. Right. Right. And so agencies are really put in the driver's seat. They can do whatever they choose with that power or that, that ability. But we built it with that in mind, because we work hard to get the rankings, and we do produce results. Our platform produces results. As an agency, we always produce results, which is why I still have clients that have been with us for 8 years. But I've had plenty of clients call me and say, hey, we just found somebody we'd rather work with right now. And, whatever, we're giving you notice. And you're like, damn, I mean, we've worked hard. So when they leave, they're going to see, they're going to see a retraction in the services that we've provided them. But also these things, you can also provide them as a way to, hey, if you want to keep these things alive, it's going to cost you $250 a month for us to keep these things alive, your media room alive, your social wall alive. You can, if you want to go on and do something else with another agency, that's fine. But if you don't want to keep these alive, or you don't want to pay anymore, then all of this is coming down along with it.
Yeah. And that's, I think it's really important to think about that, as an agency, and I'm sure we have listeners as well who are trying to find ways to grow and market their own businesses. But from our perspective, we do invest a tremendous amount of time and effort. And I've had customers come back to me after they've left, because they're like, I thought I could do better. I thought I could go cheaper. I thought I could, whatever it is. And they come back and they ask us to take them back. And if you still have some tangible asset that keeps them tethered to you or connected to you, I think that's much more likely to happen. The other thing I wanted to ask you real quick too is, one of the things that I was always really intrigued with and interested in from the Quantum Newswire days and now Signal Genesys is, that you actually, with a traditional press release system, your link is, even though it's not canonical, the link from that press release site really deteriorates over time and doesn't drive any value. You've kind of solved that problem where you create a high authority link initially because of the media sites you're publishing to, but then you also create a long-term inbound link strategy for for somebody who's published that press release too. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, we've got a couple different ways that we solve that. So, if you go back to the traditional PR services, you publish a press release to them. That press release goes live on their site and live on whatever other news sites. And on day 31, it gets archived or otherwise it's taken down. Right. Those pages only stay live on the news sites typically for 30 days. So you've got very little benefit, in a small window of time that you're getting benefit out of that traditional service, and all those services are all alike. What would happen though is, this is with Press Cable, they would brag about how we could rank, very quickly on page 1 for this term or that term if we use the press release service, the Press Cable. And sure enough, that would happen, and we'd have 2 or 3 or 4 different instances of the article or press release ranking on page 1 very quickly. And then in 30 days, guess what? It was still ranking, but now you clicked on it, went to a 404 error page. And I was like, it didn't hit me until I had a client who was at happy hour with a bunch of buddies who was wanting to show him how cool it was they was ranking on page 1 on an NBC site. And then when he showed it, his buddies did a search term, and then, there it is. He's on page 1. He clicks on it, and it goes to a 404 error page because it was 32 days later or whatever. It was like a little after a month later. It's still ranking on page 1, but now it returns a 404 error page. Well, I got a text from my client going, "Hey man, what's up? I was with some buddies and I showed them this page and it didn't. All it showed was like 404 something, And I was like, oh, that's so bad. So number one, we don't want to rank the news sites on page 1 at all. We want to rank the client's website on page 1, right? Which gets us back to the site sourcing feature.
Yeah.
I want to rank the news sites. The news sites are there for a time, for a spell, but ultimately the client wants their website on page 1 for any given search term, not an NBC site or anything else. Number 2, on our platform, we all of our content can stay live up to 6 months. So depending on the level that you come in at, you have either the content stays live for 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months. 1 month on our no-cost access grow plan, which is like a free access plan. The content only stays live for 1 month on that plan. If you're in the scale or monthly plan, it's 3 months, and our lifetime members have 6 months for longevity. So the content will stay live longer on the news sites on our platform in our monthly plan and our elite plan or lifetime plans, which gives us obviously more benefit, for that content. About day 45 or so, day 45 to 60 is about what we've seen as the content needs to stay live that long, at least that long. After that, we don't really see any drop off once the content actually does get archived, whether it's 3 months or 6 months. But staying live longer than 30 days is beneficial for sure. The third thing we did is we built our own archive. So in phase 1, we built an integration into the Wayback Machine or Web Archive. And we were literally publishing 30 different pages of every article or a press release that was published on our platform by every agency every day to the Wayback Machine. And so it was awesome and it was great. And we still do a little bit of that, but it was the volume of it as we grew. We one day, all of a sudden, the Wayback Machine like deleted everything from us because we were just flooding their archive with. It ended up being millions of pages over time, and it was just happening every day. So this happened, I think, early last year, and it caused quite a wrinkle for a while because they didn't sound like they sent us a notice saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." They just did it,
Right.
and all of a sudden, all these links that we had for the archives were broken. So we built our own archive system very quickly to replace that, and so archive.place is our new archive system. So every time an article gets published on our platform, it gets published to the original source, which is the most important permanent record of that article. It also gets published to our archive website, which is another permanent archive of that article. And then it goes out to the news sites and stays live for however long it's going to be live, depending on your level. But we immortalize that content primarily and most importantly on the target website, but then also on the archive. And then our archive, all of our redirect links from the news sites will redirect to the archives of that site on our website automatically. So the agency doesn't have to do anything. Once the content comes off of the live news sites, our crawlers automatically recognize that, automatically redirect that now to the archive version of that story on the archive site. So you don't get a 404 error experience anymore.
Yeah.
Wow. Lane, could you walk us through the first, say, 10 days or so if an agency is bringing on this software? Like, I'm curious about what the learning curve is on this for the agency folks to get this all set up and running for a client.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's pretty simple, I would say. We try to make it simple. I have a getting started video. So first video is that just a quick walkthrough of the whole platform, kind of like a guided tour. So they understand what the icons are and what for and all that. That's about a 15-minute video. And then I have a getting started step 2, which really gives them a deep dive into how to produce good quality content. I literally give them the tutorial video on how I do the research and how I structure my content. I give them the step by step. It's about 14 steps on how to actually write really good structured content. I give them examples of that. And then I give them the blueprint on how to actually just pretty much rank anything they want to rank. And then also give them a 3-part case study video series on how I ranked a page on day 0 that didn't exist, and in less than 70 days, ranked it for multiple national or global keywords using only the content, optimized content, and 3 press releases on our platform, and ranked, for the main term, it gets over 5,000 searches a month. So, the learning curve, I would say, is maybe one good day of just getting in, digging in, watching the videos, getting familiar, absorbing, how to write the content. But then after that, it's really, really simple. I'm sure Ken can speak to, how simple it is to go in, add a new press release. It takes maybe 10, 15 minutes to add a new article. And if you know how to, or if you've got a writer, it's already doing it for you and optimizing it for you. It's just a matter of minutes to just copy and paste it, build it, and send it off to the news sites.
Yeah.
Hey, Lane, one of the questions that comes to mind is a lot of our clients are local small businesses or small to medium-sized businesses. Does this strategy work just as well for them as it does for larger national, multinational?
100%. I would say this is a major solution to even the playing field. For an agency, obviously, with your cost basis on this, which is a huge advantage as well, you can actually deliver SEO for cheaper than what you've ever delivered it before, because so many of the manual processes that require human beings, which are expensive and have to be managed and monitored and who make mistakes, can now be, kind of rolled into our platform and done. Things are done way more, automatically. This basically replaced for us citation building, manual guest post blogging, and manual link building. For SEO, those are the 3 hardest things to do all the time, like every month, besides writing the content or getting the content produced. We actually have a writing team. So if you're an agency and you don't have your own writing source and don't want to handle or touch it, you can just order the content through us and we'll write it for you. But whether you write it for yourself or have your own writer or have us write it, you really get a lot of efficiencies there. Number one, So, to your point, you can really approach small businesses at a lower price point and still be very profitable. Number one. Number two, we engineered this for local SEO. Like the majority of SEO today is, to your point, local, right? The majority of keywords and industries that are out there are producing map pack results, local 3-pack. And that, I would say probably 80% or more of all keyword searches return a map pack result. It's only like e-com and national level type stuff that doesn't return at least a local result, some level or another. So we engineered this to produce GMB signals, authoritative GMB signals to drive that map pack. So when our agencies are using it for their local clients, whether it's a plumber or a chiropractor or an auto repair shop or whatever the case may be, they're using it to drive GMB rankings into that map pack, more so even than driving organic rankings. Yes, it can be used for national or global searches that don't really render a local result. My case study was one of those case in points. It was a global keyword, but the majority of our agencies are using it for local SEO, for that local SMB.
And I think you're really touching on something huge here for a lot of us in the marketing space, because some of these other entities that have been out there, it's actually been relatively cheaper to just do these big blasts that are on a national basis, whereas ironically, going more local or more regional at least has been a bigger, more expensive proposition for a lot of us. And that's really what a lot of our small business clients want. They want to be able to say, I want to, if I'm in Chicago, I want to be picked up by more Chicago media if I can, or Milwaukee or things like that. So on that note, I'm wondering, just to wrap up here, there's been a lot of talk lately about some entities as they relate to your online presence. What is that, and does Signal Genesys help develop that on presence? I know you've already talked a bit on the GMB front and some other things. What are some other ways that maybe we haven't touched on at all?
Well, I think direct rankings. We kind of touched on it here and there, but ultimately, to your point, businesses want to show up in that map pack. So I'll give you some data. Surf Pro, is a national franchise. They're in every state, every locale. If you put them up on the map, you'll see, they'll light up the map, all their different franchise locations, right? So Surf Pro National gets 60% of all of their business from the map pack across the entire country, all their franchises. So those 3 map listings are driving 60% of all of their revenue. 25 to 30% comes from PPC or the ads, and then 10 to 15% comes from the organic, the pages below, right? But the vast majority of all of their business, from franchise to franchise, one city to the next, one state to the next, is coming from that map pack. So when we talk about building the online presence of a business, what makes the most impact to them is when we as an agency can help them get to into that one of those 3 search results on page 1 for their relevant keywords. So if it's plumber's near me, emergency plumbing, hot water heater installation, all those different keywords. If we can get that business showing up in one of those 3 map results on page 1, we are going to make a huge difference in their business. And so I think it's hard for, the businesses that we typically help as agencies are the businesses that are on page 2 or page 3 or page 4. They're not yet really on page 1, and therefore they're not realizing all those opportunities, or they're missing all those opportunities. And so it's hard for a lot of these businesses to imagine how much their business will change when they get to page 1, which means they got to displace somebody else who's already there, right? We got to kick somebody else off and replace your listing with it. But once that happens, that 60% of the business that we're talking about is going to light up their phones. Their website's going to get more visits. Their GMB listing is going to get more visits. And that will translate directly into revenue. And that's where we as agencies are going to hit the money with our clients. When they're making money, they're going to keep paying us. They're going to see that result. So when we're looking at building their online presence, we're doing it in multiple ways. We've talked about that with the app channels, with Twitter, with Reddit, with the media room, digital PR, digital media, and different ways that we execute that. But ultimately, it's all focused on trying to drive the map pack and the organic rankings, because ultimately that's the presence that makes a difference directly into their bottom line. And that's what every business owner wants. Every business owner they don't really care. I mean, honestly, the majority of business owners don't care what you're going to do. What they care about is, will you make my phone ring and help me make more money and get me an ROI on what I spend with you? The methods and the strategies and the executions, they just assume probably tune out and not even know what you're doing if you can make that happen.
Yeah, and I think that's where what you're doing is kind of the marketing agency's best friend, because we all get that question about how fast is this going to work, and dare I say, it sounds like what you're doing, even though everything else we're doing is valuable, this is going to be an awesome complement and possibly a lot faster than some of the other things that we're doing content-wise.
Well, if you're doing content today, what we do with our platform, it allows you to just supercharge the heck out of that content. Like instead of you just sitting on a blog or, and then going out to maybe a couple of social posts about that content with a link to the blog article, now you supercharge it and put on these super high authoritative news and media sites with all these different map signals and link signals and citation signals and schema markup and the site sourcing feature. And now you've just supercharged the heck out of that content. You've gotten way more mileage out of that content you were already producing potentially.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
This is some really great stuff. I know we're coming up on a hard stop for Lane. If anyone has any questions real quick, I also want to give Lane a chance to talk about how can agencies learn more about Signal Genesys, get in touch with them, all that stuff.
Yeah, you can go to for agencies, go to go.signalgenesys.com. Signalgenesys.com is our root website. That's the public facing website. But for agencies, you can get our pricing and actually sign up at go.signalgenesys.com/pricing. Or just go to go.signalgenesys.com and then click on the pricing tab. If you go to that Go subdomain, you can click on proof. There's a bunch of video testimonials of agencies that have been using our platform, like Ken, for 1, 2, almost 3 years, some of them, and getting real results with it. And then you can also look at our media room on signalgenesys.com. If you want to look at a live media room, go to our root site and then click on media room. That'll show you a media room. And then also on the main site, you can click on social wall and see a social wall example as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. That's probably a good place to wrap up. Lane, thanks for joining us. That's some really great stuff. And thank our listeners, and everyone have a good day.
Hey, Paul, Ken, Ian, Dan, Ken, really appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot for taking time to talk with me and talk about our platform. Really appreciate all you guys do. If there's anything I can do to support you guys going forward, please let me know. But thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Take care.